I'll be joined in a little bit by a few customers, and we're going to talk today about how you can build top-notch marketing technology at scale with Google Cloud. But before we get into the content, I'd love to get a sense of who's in the room. So raise your hand if you're a developer. Okay, there are a few of us. Raise your hand if you're in sales or in another business role. Okay, a little fewer. Raise your hand if you work at an advertising or marketing technology company, if you're already in this space. Awesome. Great. So it's nice to have all of you in the room. And before we dive into the content, I want to start by level setting a little bit. Over the past 10 years, there's been an explosion of new ad tech and martech companies. ChiefMartech.com hosts an annual conference where they talk about the industry and they document the number of companies in it. In 2016, when they published this infographic, there were about 3,500 companies. They just released the newest infographic a few days ago with well over 7,000 companies. So the growth of technology in this space has been supported by CMOs themselves, who are signaling with their wallets. A 2018 Gartner CMO study found that CMOs are now spending more on technology than IT departments. And about a third of marketing budgets are now spent completely on technology. But even as the industry grows, we're starting to see much more mergers and acquisitions. The industry is both growing and consolidating. And the reality is, even as the industry sustains enormous growth, new challenges are emerging. For the majority of my career, I was working in the advertising technology space at a few different companies before Google, and I've had the opportunity to speak to CMOs at large brands and advertisers, as well as CTOs and CEOs at marketing technology companies. For the past 2 years, I've been focused on our Cloud for Marketing initiative, helping companies migrate and re-platform to Google Cloud. And what I've been hearing from these businesses, these companies, is that the way marketers do business is changing. And I want to highlight 2 challenges which are driving this shift. The first challenge is that marketers are shifting from traditional advertising to a focus on customer experience. The ask has now become, how do you create a compelling, personalized experience which drives revenue while also adhering to security and privacy regulations? Marketers and CMOs see where the ball is going, and according to a 2017 Gartner survey, 81% of marketers expect to be competing mostly or completely on the basis of customer experience in 2 years' time. And in 2 years' time, that's now. Right? So enterprises need to be more thoughtful about how they're managing customer data. This means new processes, new methods, new ways of tackling these challenges. And in this new world of customer experience, it's really high stakes, because the risk is that if you get this wrong, you degrade user trust, whether your user is a publisher or a user at the other end of a computer screen. The second challenge in this ecosystem is that differentiation is becoming increasingly difficult. Why? This is actually caused by what I would say 2 main reasons. The first is just the crowded nature of the ecosystem. There are more and more companies, we saw in that first slide, the infographic, more and more companies competing and specializing in the same space. As competition and scale increases, margins start to get compressed, and companies start to have to do more with less. At the same time, the speed of innovation is increasing. As the world and technology becomes more efficient, advertising becomes more efficient, and more competitors migrate to the cloud, they become more agile, better able to respond to business needs. According to a 2018 study by Seismic, marketers actually show a clear preference for working with fewer vendors in this space, which means it's more important than ever to stand out. And you need a cloud platform that can help you do that. So responding to this changing ecosystem requires a change in mindset and a different way of thinking about how you build your technology. Companies are just like humans. Companies are made up of humans. We like to do things that are comfortable, things that are easy, and most of the time that means maintaining the status quo, doing things the same way you did it previously. But maintaining the status quo isn't a recipe for success, and taking a new approach often requires making real change that will enable you to actually grow and differentiate your business. Google Cloud is a technology that's been built to help businesses transform. And it's actually just an external version of the technology and capabilities that Google has built over the years to support both our advertising and our consumer-facing products. You can think of Google Cloud like the invisible support beams that help to make all the cool things that Google does possible. It's a safe, reliable, and scalable place for companies to build and innovate, whether you're moving an entire marketing platform, marketing technology business, or just migrating one small data and analytics workload. It's also a platform that has close ties to our advertising business. And this is huge benefits for companies in the marketing technology space because you can decide how you want to partner with us, whether that's as an integration layer or whether that's with a joint go-to-market plan. In fact, we've already worked with a number of companies in this space, and we've seen great success. Mixpanel is actually a San Francisco-based analytics company. They track user interactions over web and app, and they're focused on driving and measuring user engagement and retention. They are an analytics company, and they had hugely demanding workloads. Their average customer query was scanning about 50,000 events, and some of their queries could reach as much as 10 billion events. The problem is, as they scaled, they ran into huge issues with their bare metal servers. They weren't able to reach the same performance. They were running into server downtime and system failures. So they made the decision to migrate to Google Cloud, and they were able to achieve higher performance and achieve the scale that they needed to support their enterprise customers. They wanted to maintain a median query time of 1 second for each query in order to maintain that real-time analytics. And I think the interesting part about this story, it's not up on the slide, but they actually were able to reclaim 30 to 50% of engineering time for engineering product development, which is huge when you're thinking about ways that you can innovate and grow your business. Reclaiming 50% of engineering time is amazing. So companies like Mixpanel see huge benefits from partnering with Google in ways like achieving global scale while reducing infrastructure costs. They're able to analyze valuable data and drive growth, and also future-proof their business with our smart, secure, and open platform. And I want to dive into a few of these topics. So I want to speak a little bit about our purpose-built infrastructure. Google Cloud has the most extensive cloud network with the farthest reach. We have over 100 points of presence. If you've been to our keynote or been to any other sessions, I'm sure you've heard a lot about this. This means that we have higher availability, lower latency, and better security. And especially when you're thinking about reaching the right user at the right time with the right message, it's key to maintain that scale while being secure at the same time. And our network can definitely help you do that. Aside from our network products, we have an entire suite of data products that are tailor-made for whatever challenges you face, whether that's needing to query petabytes of data or ingest millions of rows per second. The cool thing here is that as a cloud customer, you have direct access to the software systems that we've built for our ads business. And many of these products were BigQuery, Dataproc, Spanner, PubStub, BigTable, all can manage the scale of our ads products. And you can use them today, open standards with proprietary performance. These products also make it easy for you to share your data with your customers, which is really important with your customer experience hat on if you're thinking about getting all of your customer data or helping your customers get all their data in the same place. I want to dive a bit into BigTable. Raise your hand if you're familiar with BigTable. Okay, good. So if you're not familiar, BigTable is a fast, globally distributed, wide-column NoSQL database. And if all of that sounds like gibberish to you, that's fine. Basically, this means that BigTable is a super low-latency database that serves you the information exactly when you need it globally. And so when you were thinking about ad tech companies, martech companies who need to serve up in real time, BigTable is a product that's super, super helpful for that. And it's also fully managed. This means your engineers can focus on building new features, new tools, new products, rather than maintaining a database like BigQuery. Lastly, BigTable provides easy integration with open source big data tools. So it's completely compatible with existing Apache H-based setups and other Apache services like Spark and Storm. Keeping on that theme, the entire Google Cloud platform is built to support your business and the way that you work, whatever your cloud capabilities are or wherever you are on your journey. So over the past 10 years, Google has been super intentional in our support of open source projects from early work in containers to Linux to GitHub to Python. So this means when you choose Google Cloud, you're not locked in. And if you saw our keynote this morning, you heard a lot about that with some of our new announcements. But basically, we want to help you do what you want to do and use our products in the ways that supports your business best. So you can use GKE on-prem to create a single pane view for managing all your clusters regardless of where they are, and this leaves you free to migrate what makes sense for you, but also give you flexibility and control. So to summarize, Google Cloud is built from the bottom up to help you build smarter and innovate faster, whether that's providing a unique customer experience or analyzing data to help your customers receive richer insights. It's a powerful platform that's built to help you build a better version of your business. And I want to bring up a few customers to share about how they're using Google Cloud, why they choose Google Cloud, and what they're building next. So I'd love to invite up Paul Ryan, the CTO of OpenX. Put your hands together.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Paul. So what is OpenX? Okay, OpenX is an ad exchange. What does that mean? That means we get around 2.5 trillion requests for ads a month, which translate into 4.5 trillion specific events per day that we track. We work with publishers, the supply side, and help them fill their inventory slots. We reach out to the demand side, a couple of hundred folks that are proxies for advertisers. Okay, and so it's a big exchange, high volume, transaction processing, lots of things going on, lots of moving parts. OpenX is 100% on-prem right now, and we're migrating into GCP. As we speak, we're testing in Singapore for what we call our delivery sites, our front-end exchange site, which actually runs the auction. So why would a company this large with such demanding online transaction processing requirements like move to the cloud? Isn't the cloud like way more expensive and it's not going to work? And how is it going to scale to the workloads that you need? So we had all these questions pretty much at the beginning of 2018. And so we went on a journey to figure out specifically how the public cloud might help us, potentially in a hybrid mode. With a little bit of investigation, we said, well, what the hell? Why go hybrid? Why don't we see what it looks like if we're fully in the public cloud? Okay? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey, give you a little bit more background on OpenX and why we decided to use GCP. So on the publisher side, we work with basically all the largest publishers in the world, people that really want to fulfill their ad requirements and actually generate revenue. So obviously it's a very demanding client set. And there are some unique challenges working with both the publishers and the demand side of the ad tech ecosystem. And frankly, if you look at the Lumascape or the chart that we just saw, there's thousands of players. But fundamentally, when a user is on an app or on a publisher site, potentially they're working through a JavaScript container to call out to lots of different exchanges, okay, that each call out to a lot of different demand-side platforms which are representing brands for advertising. So this diagram is like, it tells you kind of the problem set. There's a tremendous amount of networking going on. There's a tremendous amount of requests going out, and then you've got to process them, save all the requests and the responses to figure out, oh, who won the auction, did you get an impression, and who do you pay the money to, and who do you bill? So that's kind of the ecosystem. There's tons of tech. There's lots of different companies involved. And actually, you know, EB is exchange bidding. That's Google. And so Google is heavily involved in the programmatic ecosystem. So what's really needed to win in programmatic is you have to have a global footprint. Even 100% on-prem, we have 5 data centers worldwide. Because you have to be close to the supply side, the client, the consumer, the person using the app. That latency is very important. But you also have to be close to the demand side because you're requesting bids from them. And so you kind of have to place things in the middle around the world in order to get the best performance. Okay? You want the lowest latency, as I said, to the endpoints and consumers that you're using. And frankly, it's got to be flexible. I mean, if our average CPU utilization on-prem is like 20%, that's all you need to know, right? it's a 5x trough to peak universe, and gosh, isn't that auto-scaling? Can't you do something about that? And it's really real-time, and I call web scale. So at any given moment, we could be up to 2 million requests per second. And as I said, more than 4 trillion events. So this is a pretty demanding set of workloads. So how do you select a public cloud provider? There's only 3 easy steps, right? Everything's 3 easy steps. So you identify the providers that have a worldwide footprint and can operate at that scale, okay? And realistically, there's probably 3 or 2.5, right? Maybe 2 3/4. So you identify the usual suspects that you would see in the Gartner quadrant up to the right. Then you actually have to do a proof of concept, because your mileage will vary, okay? Depending on the critical components of your infrastructure, they're going to behave differently, regardless of whether you're using Kubernetes on-prem or you're 100% containerized. It's going to be a little bit different. The bang for the buck in instances will be different. The networking profile will be different. So you've got to POC some stuff. And then, you model it. You figure out if it's going to work. You work with the CFO to convince them that not having CapEx is a good thing, right? Because all of a sudden your COGS go up because it's all variable, right? And so you have to have that discussion. On a cash flow basis, it might be fantastic, but from an EBITDA point of view, it may not be. So you have to have all those discussions, model it, and actually negotiate. So we did a whole series of POCs with the 3 usual suspects in terms of our front end, which is, as I said, running the auction. Okay, so we took 4 or 5 of our major components and ran them in all the public clouds, and then peered directly with our colos for all the other services, for the 150 other services that we use, and ran real production loads against it, changing up sizes and figuring out how we would potentially scale stuff. And there's some relatively meaningless graphs up there on, don't read anything into it, but we actually performance checked it, ran it up to around 1,000 QPS, just to see how the different profiles work. On the back end, our daily, our hourly ETL process, which is really this enormous set of MapReduce jobs with some Spark stuff in there, we took that and said, okay, here's an hour, here's 2 hours, here's 3 hours of raw transaction data. Let's see how much we can scale things like EMR or data proc to see if we can actually do that workload in less than an hour. Okay, so these were the 2 major components. Can we run an auction and can we actually process the data? So what have we discovered about GCP? Well, the network latency in GCP in general is just outstanding, okay? To everyone in the programmatic ecosystem, to Google, of course. And why should anyone find that surprising? If you're in programmatic advertising, is it in your interest to be peered very, very well with Google and GCP? Of course, right? So if you're in that infrastructure, your latency is fantastic. You get pretty good bang for the buck on the VMs, and we could do this across the different cloud platforms, figure out for a given workload what do we need to do. The other thing is, remember I said we're doing this periodic hourly thing where I might need 30 to 50,000 cores to do something? Well, if it takes somebody 2 weeks to try to get that test to run, that kind of is an indication they don't have enough resources to actually run the business. So that was a availability of large resources. And frankly, the open source support with things like Kubernetes, it's undeniable. So that's kind of why we chose Google Cloud. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining for this session. We at LiveRamp had a very similar story to OpenX in terms of the process that we went through in looking at cloud solutions, the decision to move to the cloud, and our decision to use Google. So LiveRamp's business, the way we operate, we're really this data and identity foundation for marketers. You heard Andrea talk about the fact that today marketers are focused on how do they build incredible customer experiences. And in order to do that, they need to be able to harness all of their data across all of the interactions that they're having with their customers and be able to leverage that data to make better decisions and interact with their customers in more meaningful ways. So we're a key foundational middleware layer that enables brands to bring together all of the data that they know about their customers, segment it, create audiences, and then activate it across any range of ad tech and martech technologies. So to give you some history about where LiveRamp came from, we had built out all of our technology was in a single colo facility based in San Francisco. We have about 100 petabytes of servers in our co-location facility. And we were hitting this point where we were scaling really, really quickly as a business. We needed to be able to expand to new markets, expand our products more quickly, launch new products faster, and just continue to innovate and grow because we're in a very high growth phase. And we were hitting limitations with the fact that we had all of our data and all of our services within our one co-location facility, which was getting difficult to manage, and we weren't able to order servers fast enough in order to keep up with our growth. So we recognized a couple of years ago that we actually really needed to move to the cloud. And then we went through a very rigorous process of looking at what are the different solutions out there, what do we think our needs are, and how do we, and do we want to go with like a hybrid solution? Do we want to go all in on the cloud? And essentially it came down to two decision-making factors. One was looking at what was the technology available, and then one was looking at what are the costs associated with that. And we did a pretty extensive model where we were looking very specifically at the kinds of technologies that we would use within each cloud provider, how much scale we would need for that, modeling like what we thought the price was going to be based on our various conversations with different cloud providers, evaluating the technologies for the scale that we are operating at. And while we have many similarities in terms of the scale we're operating at to OpenX, we have key differences. We're not doing a lot of real-time network. We don't have the same kind of real-time networking challenges. We're doing a lot of big data processing on huge amounts of data that were coming in. So the way our product works is we work with hundreds of brands, take all of their data, are processing that data, activating it across hundreds of platforms, bringing data back in from those platforms, and giving that back to the brand or putting that into different measurement solutions. So we're processing just tons and tons of data every single day. And so a lot of the challenges that we face were like the challenges that we have are fairly different than a lot of other companies that are storing a lot of data and processing a lot of data. For instance, like when we thought about moving to the cloud, one of the challenges we had is we're basically a data processing company, so we don't have a lot of data that's in cold storage. We have a lot of data that is live and it's moving through a pipeline. And so when we're migrating, we're thinking about what is this going to look like. We have to think about how do we do this without disrupting our clients. And so there were a lot of challenges that we had to go through in thinking through this process. The key thing that we were thinking about is like, how do we expand our business? How do we continue to grow? And a key part of what we're focused on is we're a company all about helping people activate their data. We have 550 integrations today across a broad range of categories. And for us, we have to think about like, how do we build these integrations faster? How do we improve the way we're pushing and pulling data from all of these different ecosystem players? And how do we just continue to offer more and more use cases to our clients? So all of this was part of our thought process as we were thinking about moving to the cloud and being able to offer products and innovate faster. As we also looked at what are the growth vectors for us. There are a lot of growth vectors. Again, we're a very high growth company. Some of the ones that I wanted to point out here is international expansion. We really needed the ability to expand internationally as quickly as possible. And with all of the data privacy regulation coming into effect, we had to think about like, how do we have more data available just in region? How do we create the right permissions around it? Other parts of our growth are really focused around data sharing. So our data store product enables companies to monetize their products. Our second-party data products enable brands to share the data with each other in secure data partnerships. And these are products that we had to think about, like, how are we going to build, how are we going to create the right permissions around this? And all of this factored into the way we thought about picking our cloud provider. So why did we end up choosing Google? There were many reasons at play. As I talked about, it was both a technology decision and a cost decision. And when we started doing the evaluation on the technology itself, and we thought about, hey, what's most important to our clients, what it came down to was security. Like, when we're talking about data partnerships and we're taking into our system valuable data from a very broad swath of the ecosystem, and people expect that data to be protected. They expect that data to be safe. And we evaluated the security practices, and we have very rigorous security practices for ourselves in our co-location facility. We had to think about, like, how are we going to port that over to the cloud? And we were really impressed by the security that Google had in place. And we've actually been able to up the game in terms of our security practices and unlock a whole new set of use cases for us, especially as we get into more regulated industries and are opening up new use cases by working with Google. The second thing for us is, like, we have evolved very quickly, but we were still a 10-year-old company. So we had to do an immense amount of infrastructure modernization. And we went through a big process even before we started migrating of containerizing all of our code. One of the things that we've really appreciated in partnering with Google is that they've been able to provide us professional services and other advisory around how to actually migrate our systems to the cloud, which has actually sped up the process for us. So we signed our GCP agreement in July of last year. We are hoping to be on track to be fully migrated by the end of August this year. So we've gone through a pretty fast process. And we've had lots of different pieces that we've had to migrate. We have our core systems here in the US. We have systems internationally that are slightly different. And so we've had many different environments that we've had to move over. And as part of that, really thought about how do we modernize our infrastructure. The other thing that's really important to us is, like I said, we're a big data processing company. So looking at the tools that are available within Google and recognizing that we can be part of the roadmap of developing those tools to better suit our business was a critical component. And underlying all of that is the people that we worked with. When you're entering into a relationship of this size, and this is a substantial investment for us financially, it's going to help us improve our gross margins. We're thinking about, like, how does this improve our partnership opportunities? Like, this is very, very fundamental to our business. And so we were looking for someone we could really partner with and someone who would lean in with us and really help us innovate faster and know that if we had an issue, we could pick up the phone and call someone and get help for what we needed to. And honestly, like, throughout this migration process that we've been through, it keeps getting reinforced that the people that we're working with at Google are just amazing. And the technical expertise they're able to bring to the table and bring to our engineering team has helped us migrate really quickly. And I think it bodes really well for the future as we continue to think about innovation. Oops. The last part that I think is really important, and Paul mentioned this as well, is our overall partnership with Google. For us, we've had a very long-standing relationship with the ad side of the Google business, and we connect tons of data into AdWords, into DoubleClick, and into some of the newer products within the Google ad stack as well. And as we were thinking about who do we want to partner with for the future, for us it was an obvious decision to partner with Google, because it brings us closer to the Google's business, but also because we see so many of our customers and partners adopting solutions on top of Google. And when we're talking about integrating data, if we're all integrated on top of the same technology stack, it makes that integration so much easier. It makes the data flow so much faster. And these are all things that we're considering as we're looking to the future and making sure that we have a partner who's really going to help us grow the business. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Michael from UrbanAirship.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, so I'm Mike Herrick. I run technology for UrbanAirship, and we're a little bit ahead of these two companies in terms of our journey. Ours started 3 years ago, at least for me it did, 3 years ago here at Next, where I met with Google. We had been evaluating them. We had previously been 80% in a colo facility and 20% on AWS. And so our colo was very quickly deteriorating underneath us. We were dealing with failing hard drives, failing networks, and it was time to re-platform. And we were considering either adding a couple colos and investing in more hardware or fully moving to the cloud. And thankfully, we made a great choice and moved to Google. It was a gigantic undertaking, but we chose it just given all the great technology fit. We used to run a ton of HBase, and HBase migrated really well to BigTable, and that was really important to us. The migration really went well. I'll tell you a bit more about it, but it really helped us manage costs. It's really hard to manage costs in a colo for a SaaS company. It really helped us make our platform more scalable. I'll show you some stuff about that, and more reliable, which really can't say enough about that in terms of just the quality of life of our engineers and just the customer satisfaction that we now enjoy. And also, now that we're on the other side of it, we no longer are doing crazy things like balancing Cassandra rings and HBase clusters and tuning Kafka. And so our engineers are able now to innovate much further up the stack, which is great. So just briefly a little bit about UrbanAirship. UrbanAirship is a customer engagement platform, so we focus primarily on things like retention and growth for our customers. We help a little bit on the acquisition side, but mostly focused on those two things. We started, you may know us, we were the original third-party push notification company, but we've expanded dramatically and create many different types of experiences these days. We expanded into various in-app experiences. We work with Google and Apple on things like Google Pay, so mobile wallets. We power a lot of your boarding passes probably if you flew some of the airlines that we support. We do things on the web, email, SMS, some other channels as well, and we operate at a pretty great scale. Ad tech is the only thing that ever makes me feel small, but we send 90 billion messages a month across these channels, and regularly exceed 500,000 messages a second. And our customer base, we're pretty much geared for enterprise, although we have customers large and small, and we have 25% of the Fortune 100 are our customers. Really briefly, this is a look at our platform. We talked a bit about channels. We support many of them. We also have this open channel API that a number of our customers use to reach things like over-the-top networks that they can't reach through any other way, and so that's nice technology. And we've been investing heavily in our orchestration layer, so that's all sorts of things around targeting, segmentation, automation, and orchestration across channels, optimizing them. And then last, all these experiences that we help our customers create send back a lot of first-party data to UrbanAirship, and we help them make use of that by providing rich user profiles, performance analytics on that data, machine learning and AI capabilities, things like predictive churn, send time optimization, and then we have some technology to stream any of this data that we process out to our customers, other aspects of their marketing technology stack. Things like BI tools, some of our customers use it to send it to ad networks, that sort of thing. So a couple examples of experiences that we provide. We work across verticals, so travel, retail, media, financial. I mentioned a lot of airlines. Our point of view is the best marketing isn't really marketing at all. It's these useful types of experiences where you can provide value and experiences that users value. So in travel, things like, hey, your seat has been upgraded. In retail, your package has shipped. Media, a story that you're interested in because you're following a journalist. financial, here's your account balance. So we do all sorts of things like that. Most recently, just last night, I put this in there because it was timely. The NCAA is a customer, and so we powered all of their March Madness messaging. So they do a great job with anything from score alerts to sending videos through rich notifications to even last night after the game, the kind of famous One Shining Moment video was sent out. So we were busy last night. Another quick story. So last year for the World Cup, soon after we finished our migration to Google Cloud, we had a bunch of customers that were really excited about the World Cup. One in particular, One Football, really wanted to make sure that their notifications arrived as quickly as possible. So we worked closely with them on some technology that we call Boost. This is just a graph. This was the end of the World Cup last year. We were sending 400,000 notifications a second for minutes. That's across our customer base. We power tons of media and sports apps. Since then, we've exceeded this milestone and regularly exceed 500,000 notifications a second. But just to lift the hood up a bit, I won't delve into too much detail, but this is a look at one of our subsystems. We call it the CDP, the core delivery platform. So it's the scale that we operate means that we have to do a lot of things that maybe we wish we wouldn't have to in terms of microservices and really kind of breaking some of these components apart. So we have what we call a distributed query planner, which deals with a lot of these subsystems. And it leverages a bunch of Google technology like BigTable. We leverage a ton of cloud PubStub and also Compute Engine. But by leveraging Google technology, again, compared back to our colo, we were able to easily add capacity for the World Cup. We can scale it up and down. And we also were able to leverage some of our own innovation by doing a bunch of software optimization to do a lot of parallel processing, some advanced queuing of some of these priority requests. And so by doing that, we were able to really meet our customers' needs. I think if we hadn't completed our move to Google Cloud, just because the World Cup was so big for our business, it probably wouldn't have gone nearly as well. So that was great. So I mentioned that we started our journey 80% on a colo, 20% on Amazon. We're expanding our footprint more globally now, so we're moving into additional regions. And so it just made sense for us to consolidate. We've had so much success with Google. Our engineers really love it. And so we've just collapsed the stack. This is one of the projects that our team is working on right now. We have a business intelligence capability, so it's really fine-grained user-level data at the event level, so just tons and tons of data. It had been running on, it's currently running on Redshift and has been for a couple of years, and that's worked okay. But we really, our customers love this product. They want to see better performance. They want fresher data. And so BigTable and BigQuery are really helping us deliver on that for our customers. And so currently we're loading this data daily just because it's so much, and just given some of the economics that at least we experience with Redshift. But we're going to be able to move that to minutes instead of per day. So our customers, as they've been hearing about this news, are pretty excited. And also our storage is now separated from compute. If you know anything about Redshift, this will make sense to you. So we can say goodbye to nodes and reserved instances, which is great for our cost. And next, just from a complexity standpoint, some of this is just the way we built the system. We're doing a lot of software updates to this as well. But with this new version of the system, we're moving from some complicated ETL that we kind of crafted from Kinesis and microservices to one single data flow job. So it just really dramatically simplifies the system. And then just our maintenance overhead is reduced. Like, we don't have to deal with vacuums anymore, which has been less than awesome. And then BigQuery cluster tables really enable efficient queries. versus we've had to do, for some of the queries, given the complexity of the data, have to do a lot of scanning of the entire data set, which is really slow. That's great. So, and then as we kind of look to the future, we have big aspirations for our company and creating more and more capabilities in our customer engagement platform. And so we're seeking to leverage more and more of Google Cloud. Right now, all of our machine learning capabilities are built in-house. We're experimenting with leveraging some of the Google stuff. Our job is to innovate further up the stack and not bother with things like managing HBase and hard drives. So anyways, that's my story. Thank you.